Okay, here we are. So hopefully you've all come to the right session today, and an hour isn't that long to look at all of these, but I'm going to try and run through with you today, looking at quality improvement, microsystem improvement and co-production. Right, I'm going to turn my camera off because this may help with the slides. Oh, goodness, sorry about this. Okay, right, let's see if this works. So I'm going to run through today who we are as the quality improvement team, briefly what we mean by quality improvement, then looking a little bit more at microsystem methodology and how that is used within the Care Trust, and then how that aligns with co-production. And then the bit really that we want to have a conversation about is how is this all relevant to me, to you, to everybody on the call. So in terms of the quality improvement team, I've introduced, well, have I introduced myself? So I'm Jo Evans, I'm the continuous improvement manager, and I'm just hoping that I think all of the team are on the call. So if they can just introduce themselves, pop the camera on, say who they are, rather than me talk about them. Ailish, do you want to start?
Yep, hi, my name's Ailish Manzoni and I'm an improvement facilitator with the team, currently on secondment from the engagement team.
Thank you, Ailish. Lee?
Hi, I'm Lee Alexander. I'm an improvement facilitator as well within the quality improvement team. Been in the team for just over 3 years now, having previously worked as a service manager at a teaching hospital. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lee. And Gurka?
Yes, hello, good morning everyone. My name is Gurka Lange and I'm a clinical leadership fellow working with the quality improvement team, and I'm on my 2nd year with the quality improvement team. Thank you.
Thank you all. So as you can see, we're quite a small team, and Gurka is just with us until the summer. So yeah, quite a small team here. But together, our purpose is to support and enable individuals and teams at the Care Trust by coaching, by sharing skills and helping to develop really the improvement experience and practice across the organisation. So you might have noticed that there's somebody missing from this presentation. So it was myself and Beverly. I had a call from Beverly last night to say she has been called to another meeting this morning. Obviously she can't be in 2 places at once. What Beverly has done is very kindly just sent in a little video. So again, I'm hoping technology is going to work here, and you should be able to hear this from Beverly. So I'm just going to play this. I've just had this sudden thought that I've not done something. Let me just try it. So. Can people hear this?
Yeah, it's not, I don't think it's playing now.
Oh.
I can see it, I can't hear it, Jo.
Okay, bear with me a second. Apologies about this. Audio, right, here we go.
Good morning, my name is Beverly Murphy and I'm the Director of Nursing, Professions and Operations here at Sheffield Health and Social Care. I hope if you've joined some of the QI sessions earlier on this week, you've had a really great time, and thank you for supporting Jo in the session this morning. I'm really sorry I can't be with you today. I just can't quite cut myself in two. But Jo has given me an opportunity to talk to you through a video and has asked me to share what my view is of quality improvement, what I understand it to be. In its simplest term, I think that quality improvement is being endlessly curious in the place that we work, in the teams and in the practice, about how we can make things better, how we can improve the safety and the experience of the people in our care, and also how we feel at work and how well our processes work. So it's about the processes and it's about the practice, and quality improvement is available to us all. Like most large organisations, we've opted to follow a methodology, and broadly speaking, that's about standing back and thinking, what do we want to change, and how do we want to go about it. So we plan what we want to do, then we put that plan into action, and then we stand back again and we wonder, did it work? And really importantly in the did it work is measuring some things to see whether or not it's made a difference, be that a reduction in waiting times, be that an increase in service user positive feedback, be that the time it takes to complete a task, whatever it is. It's important to measure to see whether or not the things that we planned to do actually did make a difference, and importantly checking to see whether or not they had any adverse consequences, any unintended consequences. So we plan, we implement, we stand back, we refine, and then we go again. And mostly we make good quality improvements together, so working in a team, because usually two heads are better than one, I find. It might just be me, but there we are. So to me, quality improvement is about being curious. It is about being the change and doing that locally and not being a top-down activity. And it is about improving patient safety and experience. And why should we do it? There is a quote by, I think it's Don Berwick, who says it's our responsibility not only to provide care, but also to make things better. And I'm absolutely persuaded by that. We all have an experience at work every day. Let's engage and let's think what might be better. So how do you get involved? When you're here today, that's a really great start. Really, you get involved by being in your teams and being curious and asking questions and how could this be done? And then linking up with the QI team and using the microsystems. And there's masses of fantastic reading out there. The IHI website, there's lots of free documents and easy read short papers on there to inspire you. So I say, really enjoy today. And I hope it inspires you to go out into the workplace and be the difference, because the best changes come from the teams who are delivering that care and know what makes a difference to the people that they serve.
Okay, hopefully everybody could hear that. So yeah, unfortunately Beverly can't be here, but great, and obviously she's put some really good messages across there. Whilst we're talking pre-recorded, I just really wanted to kind of highlight to you some other points on the website. So there is another recording from Dr. Helen Crimlis that talks about building quality improvement capacity, and then there's also, in terms of improvement tools, obviously to kind of go through all of that today would be a little bit too much, so there are some pre-records on there, 10-minute tools. I'll be perfectly honest with you, some of them are 10 minutes, some are a little less, some might be a little more, but in terms of just short snippets, bite size, if you're wanting to find anything more out, and all of those are available on our website under the Quality Improvement Week link. So just going back really to what is quality improvement, and quite simply, I think, you know, Beverly outlined it there. I was looking before this thinking, you know, what are the different meanings, and actually it's quite simple. It's just working alongside our service users, staff, carers, families, anybody who gets involved with receiving or providing the care, where we can make changes that will benefit us all and improve. And in order to kind of achieve quality improvement, there's really three key elements. Firstly, we need some ideas. So we need to know, what is it? Who's got some ideas that can make things better? Where can we do things a little bit better? And when we've got those ideas, we also need to have that will. We need to be able to want to make them better. So we have ideas, you know, maybe walking down the corridor, but actually we want to be able to do something about it. And then there's the execution. So how are we actually able to do it? And I think, I was going to say particularly in our organisation, I don't think it is. I think perhaps across NHS and other organisations as well, that's probably the hardest part. We have really enthusiastic people who come up with ideas, who want to do it, but how do we actually enable that? And when you get all of those three together, that's where improvement happens. And I really like this quote, and those of you who know me will have heard this many times, about every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. And what that means really is, quite often we look and we say, oh, we need more staff, or we need more of this or more of that, because something isn't working, we're not achieving. And actually, sometimes we just need to take that step back and look, is it because we've not got enough of the same thing, or do we need to be looking at something slightly differently? So if the system isn't designed in a way to get the results we're wanting, it doesn't matter how much resource we put in, it's still going to get the results we're not wanting. So it's about just taking that step back really and looking at the system as a whole. So at the Care Trust, we've got our strategy. Obviously, that's due to for an update next year. But what I want to point out really is about the Microsystem Improvement methodology. And as a trust, as Beverly mentioned as well, the core approach that we are implementing, that we're promoting, is the Microsystem Improvement methodology, and that's for the continuous improvement. And we set out in here that all teams will be trained in this methodology and have access to ongoing coaching and supervision. And I think that's something that myself and the QI team have really had quite a challenge with. And I think, you know, those of you who were involved in Microsystems will understand some of the challenges as well. And it goes back to those 3 circles earlier, I think, around the will, the ideas and the execution. But we'll come on to these. So I mentioned, if you were here in time, I did mention you may want to have brought a pen and paper. If you haven't, it's okay, don't run off and miss half of this. Just a little quiz. There's only 6 questions, but I thought it might be a little bit of a different way. So I'm not going to ask for hands up or anything, just pop it down on a piece of paper in terms of these questions. So I will read them out and then we'll move on. So question 1 is Microsystem improvement, and I do know there's going to be people on this call with totally different levels of understanding. So Microsystem improvement is about A, improving our IT systems, B, it's simply another term for quality improvement, C, it's a structured approach to helping teams make improvements, or D, it's a top-down method to help managers direct improvements. Just give you a couple of seconds. And I'm going to move on to question 2. So which of the following statements is not true? The Sheffield Microsystem Coaching Academy, otherwise known as the MCA, is A, one of many academies of its kind in the UK. B, is a partnership between Sheffield Health and Social Care Trust, Sheffield Teaching Hospitals, Sheffield Clinical Commissioning Group and Sheffield Children's. It was developed and adapted from the Dartmouth Institute in the US. It trains improvement coaches across the entire UK. Move on to question 3. Question 3. How many teams do we have at the Care Trust engaged with Microsystem Improvement approach? Is it A, 10, B, 20, C, 30 or D, 40? Question 4. Which of the following people are encouraged to regularly attend and influence Microsystem improvement meetings? And you can pick as many as you want from these. So we've got A, is it clinicians and frontline staff? B, admin staff? C, service users? D, carers, family members? Or E, managers? Question 5. The purpose of a microsystem coach is to A, support teams with improvements by offering tools and structure. B, offer advice and expertise on the subject that the team want to improve. D, project manage a specific improvement task. Or D, get as many people to join the meetings as possible. And this is the final question. Quality improvement is the responsibility of the microsystem team, the responsibility of senior managers. Is it C, something that we should allocate an hour a week for? Or is it D, something that should be embedded into everything we do? Okay, so due to practicalities, if we were all in a room, I'd be asking for a few hands up, but due to practicalities, you can mark your own questions. So going back to question 1, microsystem improvement is, so those of you who put C have got it right. It's a structured approach to helping teams make improvements. When I first started at the Care Trust, a lot of people got Microsystem and Microsoft mixed up. So we're thinking it's around IT systems. Or now we've kind of gone from Microsystem improvement being used maybe as another term for quality improvement, and actually it's a methodology for quality improvement. And it's definitely not a top-down method, quite the opposite in terms of its bottom-up approach, really kind of having people from involved in it. So in terms of which of these is not true, if you put A, then that is correct. Sheffield Microsystem Coaching Academy is actually, up until this month, the only academy of its kind in the UK, established in 2012. It is a partnership between the 4 trusts in Sheffield, and it was developed and adapted from Dartmouth Institute over in America. And it trains microsystem improvement coaches across the entire UK. So I sit on that teaching faculty, and we have people flying over from Northern Ireland. We have people from Scotland, Wales, and across England. So really something we should be proud of at the Care Trust to be part of. How many teams have we got engaged with the approach? So I say 30, and the reason I'm just kind of took a little breath before that is obviously COVID has challenged us a little. So in times where we could all meet safely, we had 30 active teams. We probably have about a third of those now actually meeting online, and in this approach that we're doing now, it has brought a lot of challenges. So we're hoping to get those back up and running, you know, where we can. But that's 30 that we've got at the moment. In terms of people who are encouraged to come, I'm hoping that this is kind of the key point I'm wanting to get across, is that it's everybody. And it's not about getting the full team there, as many people as we can, but some representation from clinicians, representation from each of the different professions, from admin. So often admin staff I've heard are kind of, oh, it doesn't involve me. Actually, so many things, they're really key players. Service users, carers, family members, absolutely vital to get involved, and as wherever we can, getting them actually in the meetings. And I know we've got some people on the call today who are part of microsystem meetings, and it's just so valuable having that voice within the room and being able to just bring in that perspective as well, and collaboratively make improvements. And managers, absolutely, it's about involving, not about them directing, but we absolutely need the support of team managers to be able to move forward with things. Question 5, then, the purpose of the microsystem coach is to support teams. It doesn't matter if you've got no expertise. I coach teams that I've got no idea, really. I'm not clinical background, so I often don't know about the clinical, but that's what the team are there for that expertise. I'm there to then support them by offering some tools and a structure in terms of how to make improvement. And it's also in terms of getting as many people to the meetings as possible. As I've said, actually, it's up to the team really to want to. That's where the will comes in. It's pointless coaches sort of forcing people. We want people to want to improve and own this work. And finally, quality improvement, a bit of a leading question, hopefully. But in terms of actually, yes, it's all of the above, I guess, but it's something that should be embedded into everything we do. And I think we are quite a long way from that. You know, this week is probably seen as something, have people got time to come to these events? And we want to get to an approach where actually this is part of what we do, and this becomes part of what everybody's involved with. Okay, so that was the quick quiz. So again, 3 key elements really to, 3 seems to be the number, to microsystem improvement. Talked a little bit in that quiz around team coaching. Microsystem obviously is key that you need, and the microsystem is really just another name for the individual team, for that front-facing team, including the service users and the carers. And then there's the improvement science, and that's the microsystem methodology then. And all those together bring quality improvement. So in terms of microsystem methodology, Darren Anderson here quotes, if you want to make true and lasting change, ask the people who do the work how to go about it. And I think we go that a little bit further as well, in terms of it's not just the people who provide the care, but people who are receiving the care as well. They're the people that need to be involved in making change. So it's not about people asking to buy in. We often use this term, buy in, but it's about the teams and the people receiving and providing the care really owning what they want to make better. So a little example here in terms of the structure, and the way that we often describe it is a bit like a patient. So looking at the health status. So for example, if I go to my GP and my foot is hurting, for example, I would hope that the GP would assess rather than make a judgment and send me off before he's even assessed what's happening. Then probably make some kind of diagnosis and come up with a few options, a few change ideas. And then we're going to try something, give it some treatment, and that's plan, do, study, act, PDSA. And usually you'd start with something that's the minimal impact. So take my foot, it might be that he says, prescribes me a bit of cream, you know, your foot's hurting, go and try this. I'm going to go away, we create a plan together, I go away, I do that plan. Beverly talked about this in her talk about the PDSA. Then I'm going to study it, I'm going to see, is that working? And then I'm going to act. If it's not working, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the GP, and then we'll perhaps do this again and we try something else until we find something that works, and then it's standardised. But we're still going to standardise, do, study and act, because actually it might come back in a few months. We're always going to keep our eye on it. And that's the same thing really with improvement. We're going to assess something, we're going to come up with some ideas, try them. If it doesn't work, we try something else. And when we find something that works, then we're going to standardise. So this again here just really portrays that PDSA cycle, and I think some people may be quite familiar with this. Microsystem methodology incorporates the PDSA, the plan, do, study, act, and it's that testing, small tests of change, keep debriefing with the people, communicating and repeating cycles until we achieve what we want to achieve. This is the Microsystem Improvement ramp for those, and I don't intend to go through this because this is a whole course in itself really, but just very briefly in terms of what it means, we talk about the 5 P's assessment. So this is the assessment, this is where I'm going into the GP and the GP is finding out. We go into a team, and the team, we look at those 5 P's which are highlighted across the bottom, the 5 different angles to be looking at. What is it? What are we finding out? Is the problem that we think is the problem really the problem? So from all of that, we pull together all of this information, pull out some themes. What are some of the themes that are coming through here? From that, you'll have a big aim, or global aim as we call it. What's the general thing we want to do? Make it a bit more specific then, in terms of measurable outcomes. What is it that we're trying to achieve? Some of the change ideas. So what are the different change ideas that we're coming up with? What are different options that we're going to try, and how are we going to measure those? And then we've got up here, this is where we do that PDSA that I've just talked about. We're going to plan them, do them, study them, act. What are our measures telling us? And in terms of working our way up this improvement ramp, that's the role of the microsystem coach. They will coach teams through this and through the process. One thing I did want to just highlight here is what we've got effective team meetings. And what we mean by effective meeting skills is within these meetings, we encourage, again, the role of the coach is to encourage a flattened hierarchy. And that means everybody, when you go in the room, we leave the titles on the door. So yes, you bring your different perspectives, but it's not about the manager leading. It's not about the admin person taking notes. It's not about the service user feeling that they're just there. You know, actually everybody is there, has got an important role. So in terms of the roles that I've just noted on there, they rotate every meeting. So we have different people taking on those different roles. It makes no difference who you are when you've got your name badge on outside the room. In there, everybody has an equal role, and we change that every week to make sure that we're not reliant on one individual, but the meetings can continue. We'll have some ground rules in terms of how the meetings are going to run, and again, the teams agree those between them just so that the meetings can run smoothly. And then we evaluate at the end of the meeting. And this is really important, because how often do you come out of meetings and say, oh, that was a waste of time, I'm not going to go in there again. Actually, you need those discussions in the room, and you need to find out, well, what could be improved for next time, and what went really well, what don't we want to change? And that helps those meetings be really quite effective. The other thing that I just wanted to highlight, and this has come up just through some other sessions I've been to this week, but something that we really try and promote is what we call a check-in. And this is something that I sometimes use. I probably don't use it enough. I use it when I'm doing the teaching, probably not enough with the teams that I'm coaching. But this is really helpful, and this is one you might just want to just spend 5 minutes. Which of these pictures is just sort of showing how you feel today? And you can just go around, and it just gives that little bit of an opportunity just to bear in mind where people's heads are at today. So if someone comes up with something that you're not quite happy about, there may be something behind that. So this can be really helpful, just having this little check-in to say, how are you actually feeling today? Before we get straight onto work, let's look after ourselves. Okay, so very briefly, this is all going to be on our website, so I am going to keep brief with this, but people do say, so what? what's being achieved through this microsystem approach at the Care Trust. So some examples here are things which are have graphs that are able to measure them. So we've got STEP in terms of improving attendance. We've got increasing activities on Maple Ward. We've got the similar thing with Forest, or we might have things such as in the community brain injury team, they improved the environment, and that was really important to the service users involved with their microsystem, about feeling welcome, about being really obvious where they've got a feedback zone. Encliffe Ward there working to reduce restrictive practice. Again, more examples here. One I'm going to draw attention to is the South Recovery team have developed something around the supervision performer. That was a little while ago, and that's actually being pulled out again now with the work that's going on with getting us back to good. And so it doesn't always have to be about graphical things, but that was about well-being and about how they were looking after their staff and making supervision not just about performance, but about actually looking after their well-being as well. So picking up from that, really, just some of the other things that have come out are what we'd probably call softer outcomes. So we can't measure them as such. I probably haven't got a graph to show you, but the feedback that we get is teams are really welcome. Those that are involved in it really welcome the time and the space for coming together. Collaborative working with their colleagues and with service users. Feeling valued and listened to. Some people say it increases their confidence. They've never really led a meeting before or taken notes. It's a safe environment for people to just try out those new roles. People feel empowered and really kind of feeling they can make a difference, which all of those lead to improved staff well-being. I've just got a quote here that somebody gave us. It's quite a while ago now, but I think really really important, that the approach develops trust within the team as well, which enables honesty and a positive discussion. So all of those things are really positive. And the other thing I think I talked about, about that feeling safe. Something again that came up in one of the sessions I was at on Tuesday was about this fear of people trying things and failing. And I really like this quote in terms of Thomas Edison saying when he invented the light bulb and was asked, so he says, I did not fail 1,000 times. I found 1,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. And actually, that goes back again to the PDSA, the Plan, Do, Study, Act. We have to keep testing and trying to get. And I think that's where we need the leaders of our organisation to kind of be enabling the teams to be saying, it's fine, you can try this. Obviously, it needs to be in a safe way, and that's why we start small, but it's okay, and it shouldn't be seen as failed, it should be seen as learning. So the value of collaborative working. One of the things that I think is brilliant, I always try to share this one, is Neurocase Management Microsystem. Due to kind of the condition that a lot of their service users have, it's not really practical to expect people to come to weekly meetings. So they took that decision to service users, and one of the service users invited them to their house once a month and said, I'd love to be part of the meeting. If you want to come here, obviously during COVID, that won't be happening, but beforehand, and hopefully it will once again. That was a way of bringing people, bringing the meeting to the service users. Again, some collaborative working with STEP around collaboratively exploring an educational course and building that together. And again, now some work that's going on with collaborative care planning and working with service users about making sure that they are actually collaborative care plans, and how can they be really helpful to both sides, not only to the staff but to the service user as well. Which just brings me really onto the final point of this presentation before we open up for some discussion, which goes a little bit more into co-production. And I've not got a definition of co-production because I don't think there is one, if I'm honest. Or there's lots. There's not one single one. There's lots. But what really stood out for me is about this in our vision about being recognised as world class in terms of co-production. And I think whilst we're heading in the right direction, I think we've probably, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn by saying we've probably got a long way to go, as have many organisations. Having worked in many NHS organisations myself, I think actually the Care Trust, we do pretty well, so we should be proud of that. And we've got in here the service user engagement and experience strategy to help us with that. That is in the process of being reviewed as well, so we'll have a new one next year. but also from more of a national perspective. There's lots of documents, and I've picked out a couple from the King's Fund here, in terms of highlighting the empowerment of service users and frontline staff to develop services from the bottom up. Again, the ethos of co-production being applied to work on quality improvement, and patient engagement and co-production being critical to quality improvement, and embedding it into existing improvement methodology, which is where I think it's already there in the trust, because microsystem improvement methodology is all about that co-productive approach. So there's a couple of tools I'm highlighting here. There's probably many, but these are the two that people seem to talk about in our in the NHS. So we've got the 4PI, National Involvement Standards, the 4 Ps there being principles. So how do we relate to each other? The purpose. Why is there a purpose for involving people? Why are we doing this? Presence. Have we got the right people involved? Process, in terms of how are we involving people, and all of those 4 Ps in terms of, well, then what's the impact? What difference has that made? Another one people might be familiar with is the ladder of engagement. I think this is interesting because a ladder sometimes gives the impression that we should be climbing and aiming for the top. I don't think that's actually correct. I think that's about which step is the most appropriate depending on what we're doing. But in terms of if we are looking to co-produce and collaboratively work together, it's actually, I would say, this about working in partnership. It's not about moving the decision making either way, it's about working in partnership. But this can be a really handy tool to look at to say, in terms of the work I'm doing, which one is appropriate? And I really like this slide because we talk about equality and we talk about everybody having equal opportunity. And actually, it's not really about providing everybody with the same and then that's equality. Sometimes people may need that little bit more in order for them to get the same outcome. So it's not so much about equality, but more about equity. And I think this slide is very good at portraying that. And I think sometimes we just need to think, we may think, oh, they're getting special treatment or they're getting something. Actually, they're not. They just need that little bit more for it to be equitable. So I'm just going to finish really with some of the key challenges. Are they key challenges? They're challenges that we hear. We'll involve service users once we've sorted the main issues. We're a bit embarrassed about what's going on. Actually, the service users are experiencing that, so they know. And the carers, they know. We don't have time. In the long run, actually, it's a lot better in that time. It's not appropriate in our service. That's always an interesting one. And we kind of throw that back, why not? One service user can't represent everyone. Well, actually, one member of staff can't represent everyone, but actually it's just having that voice in the room. And some of our service users sit on groups where actually they do represent a number of people. So I think that's really important. But the thing that I just want to highlight as well is it's about valuing people's expertise, and we all bring a range of expertise. We don't just come in there, and apologies for those who hear this from me all the time. You know, we're not lucky enough to just get one hat, you know, and where many of us have got lived experience as service users, as carers and as working members of staff. We may only be seen as one of those for now, but I think we all bring a whole range of expertise with us, and that's what true co-production is all about. So just before I finish, a little bit of a plug actually for this afternoon's session and talking of co-production, because one area I think we're getting better at in the trust is involving our service users. I think the area that we still perhaps don't recognise as much is the carers, and particularly young carers. And I was talking yesterday to Sarah Gowan and recognising that actually, particularly through COVID, the number of young carers that are coming through now, you know, having to care when they perhaps haven't done before. What can we do as an organisation to really support them? And I think perhaps we don't quite see that connect. So I'd really encourage people, if you haven't already, you can join live here. Go onto our website and just click on the link. And I think, you know, how can we support our young carers who are looking after our service users? Okay, so that's enough from me now. Hopefully I've left enough time for some discussion. I've put a couple of questions up there. What I am going to do is stop sharing my screen now so that I can actually see people, because I'm just talking to myself at the moment. So if people have been maybe putting messages in the chat, we can pick up on those. If you've got any questions or you want to say anything, if you use the hands up function, Ailish is going to help me with this a little. So there's some discussion on here around why do we feel we don't have time for QI, which I strongly feel is the case with a lot of people. What stops us just getting on with it? What stops us just doing it? Or you may have something else you want to talk about. That's absolutely fine. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now and come back to everybody. Okay, so if anybody wants to, I'll put my camera back on as well. There we go. So do people have any comments, questions, observations, or do we want to reflect on those questions that I have that I posed there? Okay, so I've got a couple of hands going up. I'm going to start with Myra. If you want to unmute yourself, please.
Sorry to be slow. I had to work out how to unmute myself.
Not a problem at all. It's challenging as all, as you saw with my presentation, Myra. It's absolutely fine.
One comment I would make, that last year from the expo sessions we had, I ran a workshop and it was about collaboration, and we got on to why some people wouldn't involve service users, and people were asked to write down on a post-it some reasons that they felt service users shouldn't be involved. And it made my blood boil, because they say they won't understand, they are not reliable, etc., etc. Well, some people may not understand, but others do. So you can't have a blanket approach to all. And some people may not be reliable, but some people are extremely reliable. And these things went on round the room. I won't repeat any more because some of them were quite insulting. So those were just things that people said why they wouldn't involve service users. And personally, I think it's very important, as you said in your presentation, to involve service users, because they can bring a different angle to things. And I'm very grateful to the team in South Recovery that they have involved myself, and they do actively ask for my point of view, which I give, and it's always well received for discussion. They may not agree, but at least it's discussed. And so I would thank them for that openness. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Myra. I think that's really important as well, isn't it? As you've just said there, actually, even if they don't agree, even if it's something to give you the voice and to explain and have that conversation, I think is really important. And it's really disappointing, actually, you know, to hear what you've just said about some of the views of you know, what you were saying that came out of a discussion last year. So thank you for sharing that. James, you've got your hand up. If you want to just unmute yourself. You're still
Hi, Joe.
unmuted.
Sorry.
There we go. No problem.
I've got a new headset and it doesn't unmute properly. It's James Clark in the States. It's a question really. I just we do quality improvement. We kind of just do it a bit more ad hoc. We're not as structured as this. It was a question about I get involvement and getting everybody involved and everybody having buy-in. How do you stop it becoming design by committee, where it's not as you know, if you're doing a good strategy, at some point somebody needs to be clear about the organisation, you know, the direction of a team or a department. How do you stop it becoming a bit of everything and not enough of one thing? So it's not clear what it is. Do you know what I mean?
I think so. I'm going to try and answer the question. If I don't answer your question, then perhaps I've not understood it. I think what you're asking is if you've got a group of people and it's truly kind of collaborative, there might be some things you need to work on, and they might not. You might be focusing on not necessarily the right thing. Is that what you're talking about, James?
Yeah,
or?
I suppose if you were looking at if you were looking at like if we have an architect who designs a building.
Yeah.
Or does an environment or designs an office environment.
Yeah.
If you ask everybody what they want, they'll
Yes.
come back with. You might come back with 100 different things, and
Yeah.
I like my wall this color, and I like this, and then the overall look is it works in patches, but the overall thing isn't a good quality.
Yes.
And it's I find it hard sometimes. You know, I do systems, and if you ask everybody how they want to do their file names, everybody chooses different ways, and then it becomes a mess. So at some point, somebody needs to say, no, this is the way, that top down, this is what we're doing. How do you deal with that?
So I'm going to answer, and then I've noticed a couple of hands going up here. So I'll come back with. So I think it's interesting in terms, James, how you say at some point there needs to be a top-down decision. What I would say is actually what we use something called multi-voting, and actually it's more about the majority. So you're absolutely right that decisions need to be made, and we can't go with everybody, but as Myra just kind of talked about there, if she puts her perspective forward, as happens with other people within the team, there's a discussion and then an agreement around perhaps and sometimes it's we have had disagreements in those meetings, and we've ended up going, right, quick vote, and we go with the majority because decisions have to be made. So I would challenge you a little bit in terms of the a top-down decision has to be made at some point, but I would agree with you in terms of a decision needs to be made at some point, and I would kind of encourage that being the majority. What I would say though is there's always going to, we are a public organisation, there's always going to be some things that we must do quite clearly. So if we need to do, there are the must-dos. The where this can come in is the how we do it. Okay. So how we can do it is collaboratively. The must-dos are, we can't, clearly there are some must-dos and we can't get away from that, but the approach is about doing that together and listening to the people as to how's the best way to do it. So I'm going to move on to, I'm going to just see, I think Lee and then Claire both put their hands up, so this may be in response to your question as well, James. So Lee, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, but also I think there's sometimes it's misconstrued around the microsystem approach, because it's all about balance in my mind, and not every decision or every change will need to go through a microsystem. Some things are quite, like I used to manage services, and I used to manage haematology, and across haematology, for instance, I had 6 different microsystems ongoing. I had one on outpatients, one on inpatients, and so. And as a manager, there's lots of decisions that come my way which you have to make, and it's not appropriate to feed it into the microsystem. But where a lot of the challenges that we face within the trust and within the NHS are really complex, and not one person has the solution to that. And as a manager, for me, it was great to have a resource of engaged people who work within the services and receive the service to discuss and work through that problem. So I hear your point, James, and I completely agree. Lots of things can't be designed by committee, and that's okay. But where there's something that actually is complex and needs wide perspectives, and I find the microsystem approach is a really good place to take those. And the other thing as well is, another misconception is that microsystems delays decision making, and it doesn't, in my mind. I think if you approach change in a methodical way, you get to the end result quicker. A lot of the time, teams move forward with change and then get to a point where actually we need to go back and revisit what we're actually trying to achieve. Whereas if you do it where you bring everyone together and be clear about what are the collective aims of this work, and use that to inform what you're going to try and unpick as the problems, and then come up with ideas which address those aims, it actually speeds up the process, I find.
Thank you, Lee.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, and Claire, is yours in response to James, Claire, or have you got another question?
Not particularly in response to James, but
Okay.
I completely agree with what Lee was saying. Just an example in our department in older adult community mental health, we identified a problem with our telephone system. We used to have a really, really long voicemail system when a patient would ring, you know, with an option of leaving a message or going through to someone. And in our service user group meeting, it was identified that they felt that was really unhelpful and confusing. And going back to saying, like, why do we not just do these changes? It has taken us probably 9 months to work through that process of changing the message and agreeing a message and getting it implemented. And I think that it's been brilliant, and we've started using it now, but I think people don't just do it because everything takes so long in an organisation like ours. But yeah, but you have to kind of like keep plugging away. So maybe these microsystems meetings, you know, would facilitate that and make it much quicker.
Yeah, thanks for that, Claire.
Mm-hmm.
Lee, is your hand gone back up again, or is it up from?
Yeah. Sorry, I've always got something to say. So just reflecting on, I just share one experience. When I first started coaching as a microsystem, the one time that really sticks in my head, I was doing it at a teaching hospital, and it was a really complex problem, and we'd had about 4 microsystem meetings, about like a month of meetings, and in that time we'd been clear about what the problem was, we'd been clear about our aims, we'd unpicked it, and we started to generate change ideas. And this consultant said to me, he said, at the end of the meeting, he said, this is taking ages, we just need to change it. And I just reflected back to him and said, okay, we're 4 meetings in, how long has this been an issue? And he said, well, since I've started, I've been here 15 years. And I said, but can I ask then, in these last 4 meetings, do you feel that we're further forward with this? And he was like, well, yeah. So I said, well, let's put this into context. Granted, you've given 4 hours of your time to a problem and you're an activist and you want to move and change and stuff. But if we hadn't had these 4 sessions, people would still be complaining and moaning in the wings about this and not even doing anything constructive to address it. So I think we just have to be realistic sometimes. And it's just one thing that I always remember and makes me realise that change.
I think that's a really interesting, funny, interesting point, Lee, actually, and I think that is something that people do. So the microsystem approach is not, as I mentioned in the presentation and as Lee has said, it's not microsystems is not instead of quality improve. You know, it's not another term of it. Microsystems is one methodology for the continuous for the continuous improvement and for the things where it is appropriate. As we said, there might be other projects that need to happen quick, fast. There will be some top-down things, and that's fine, you know. And there'll be we can still measure those, but they're not to take to the microsystem meeting, because actually that's about giving people a voice. And if we can't give the people a voice, let's not pretend we can. You know, so I think that's really important. And in terms of what Lee's just said about the time that it takes, that is something that some teams say, but I think people who then stick with it. So Myra mentioned the South Recovery team, they've been going for some time now. And what's great is actually, you know, there's now in that rhythm, they have those meetings all the time. We have different attendance, but it keeps going. And there's a forum that is there for when things come up that can address things, which at the moment, with obviously getting us back to good, is really important. So as I noticed Lee's hand's gone up again. Has anybody else got any comments or questions before I go back to Lee? Come on then, Lee.
I'll just leave my hand up now, Joe. Sorry, I'm thinking lots about this now. The other thing as well is, whilst there's a balance and not everything goes through the microsystem and decisions are taken outside of the microsystem, one bit of learning that I was perhaps surprised myself with is the teams where they've got a microsystem ongoing tended to respond really well to COVID, the challenges, in terms of their thought process. And it wasn't the fact that the response came through the microsystem. It's that the team had almost evolved a way of thinking through a problem. So it's the spin-off benefits of like a structured approach is that the team were able to pick and choose which tools they could then apply to a problem to get a quick solution without going through the structure of a microsystem as well.
Yeah, and I think picking up on that, again, one of the teams, in terms of the evaluation work that we've been supporting teams with, I don't know if anybody was at the presentation on Monday, and certainly, with one of the teams, it didn't go through the microsystem. It was at all in terms of the way that it was developed, etc. But it was a forum that we could quickly take a questionnaire to say, do we think we're asking the right questions? When they did, you said we did. So, they'd got that in their head to say, we've asked all of these service users for their opinion. We need to let them know what we've done. And that is something that we need to get far better at as an organisation. But because that team have got that kind of a process now a little bit more embedded, it could go back and we could get that and straight out. So I think that's absolutely right in terms of the kind of, it goes back to those softer outcomes again, doesn't it? I think in terms of the way that people that think and that people feel that they have a voice, that people feel like it's done collaboratively. I just want to go back. I'm just looking at the time. We've just got 5 minutes left, really. But just back to maybe some things around why people feel, and Claire touched on it a little bit, I think, around why we can't just do it, if you like, and why we still feel that, I'm saying we, it's very general, obviously, but why there's a lot of people still feel perhaps that quality improvement is something that we need to add on, that we perhaps haven't quite got time for. For example, this week, I wonder how many people have actually joined in things who would like to, and whether they feel they can't quite give themselves permission. So, or whether, within your teams that you're in, do you feel that you are able to say if you want to make a change? Do you feel that you'll be heard? Do you feel you'll be listened to? Don't know if anybody is able to come forward on that. Gurka, do you want to step in there, and then over to Myra?
See, I was actually going to, thank you, Jo, going to link this to also what Myra was talking earlier on, just with regards to the involvement of service users, families, carers. So that sense of, from an experience of mine where I worked with a quite complex team where, people were very passionate about doing changes, coming together, exploring different ideas, but then really trying to think very hard, how can we get service users involved? And obviously there is consideration about what is appropriate, what works for the service users and families, but also to bear in mind there are different ways. So for example, there's the option of doing interviews, live interviews, or also, you could do telephone calls and obviously have people present there. But my experience there was, kind of thinking about what stops us doing it. Well, what encourages us, what I really saw there was, once we did interviews, we kind of recorded that, then shared it with the team. It really brought the team together. And there was that sense of, yes, this is why we're here. This is why we're doing what we're doing. And this is why we want to look at what can be improved. And actually the service users' families' voice there was very strong to bring us together and focus us on, yes, this is what we want to invest the time in to make things better for the people we are here for.
Great, thank you, Gurka. And Myra, did you want to pick up, I would guess, do you want to pick up from there?
A bit of that, yes. What Gurka said about getting service users involved in different ways, by the telephone, by getting their views outside the meeting, all sorts of innovative ways. And when you do get them involved, I found that their points of view are very helpful in some ways. Just a quick example from South Recovery, we were trying to make up a paper to say what questions could be asked and how the care plan might be constructed. And we came up with a lot of things. We will talk to you about, we will. And I said, no, you won't. And with that led to rephrasing these comments to make them more user-friendly. And that, I feel, produced a better document and a more inclusive document. And we've now taken that forward and it's now being used, which I think is a positive example of a service user putting in a point of view from their way of looking at it. And I was quite encouraged that that was taken on board. Yeah. That's just my comment.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Myra. James, you've got your hand up again.
Hi. So I was just going to say, in my experience, I think people want to do really big changes that have really big impacts so that they can deliver a big project. But what we try and do is lots of little changes that just slowly improve. They don't take long to do, and you can get them done in an afternoon or a week or something, rather than saving them all up and trying to redesign a whole system. And then the only other thing I was going to say is sometimes I don't know if people get daunted by they think they've got to produce graphs and things and big reports, and some things they might be qualitative and they might just make things better. And you can't produce a report to show what's happened. And I don't know, it's easy to do it if you can get loads of graphs and say, look what I've done. But if you can't do that, I don't know if people are put off by that. Just my observations, really.
I think that's a really good point, James, actually, and hopefully just in terms of some of the outcomes I was talking about earlier from Microsystems, I know not so much from this trust actually, but when I used to work at the teaching hospitals, it was all about graphs and about, financial savings or something like that. Yeah. And actually, one of the big things that came out was just people feeling that, wow, I've got an hour to sit with my team and now understand what they do. And we're churning away. We didn't actually realise how we impacted on each other. And now understand that and now feel listened to. And some of those softer outcomes we were talking about have been really, really valuable to the team and to staff wellbeing and the collaborative just approach from the team. We haven't got a graph to prove that. And actually, over the 6 months, did it have an impact in another way? It probably took another 6 months to get something, that perhaps people, I'm going to say that you could graph, but potentially. But I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's not about producing that. It's about, which I have to say in this organisation compared to others I've worked in, I do think that it is more around kind of experience. It is valued as well as a measure. How we measure that as well, obviously we that's in different ways, isn't it? But I do think totally understand what you're saying there. It's not all about graphs, and I mean, if people do want to produce graphs, that's not what we do here, but there are those tools that I've talked about, so there is the option, because sometimes people want to but they don't know how to, so if you want to go on the website, there's things there. But I hear what you're saying, that sometimes it's not about that, is it? It's just about things feel better. I'm very conscious of time. We've just got a minute or so left. Oh, Lee's hand went up, but it's gone back down again. It's gone back up again. Has anybody else got any final? I mean, use the chat function by all means as well. If you've got things, if you don't, want to put your hand up, that's absolutely fine. If you want to pop anything in the chat function. Lee, do you want to just have some final words?
Yeah, I just picking up. Is it an interesting dynamic around what a big change is like versus what little changes are? I think that the mistake we sometimes make as a trust is we make a change and we assume that that's it's done. And I think what we try and encourage teams to do is actually sometimes when you make the change, that's just the start, and your learning process around the changes will evolve. So one example I'm involved in is smoke free, and that's been ongoing since 2016. And the wards reaffirmed their commitment to smoke free on the 21st of September. But that was really the start. A change happened, and but actually these 4 weeks of where the learning has really come in. So I think that the narrative that we're trying to encourage is that change is continual, and it's learning about your change as it goes, because we rarely get it right first time. I know I never do.
Absolutely, and I think that links into the culture session that was held on Tuesday by Gabby, and there was a lot of talk there around moving our organisation to a learning culture, rather than, perhaps, I'm not saying it did, but some people were talking about perhaps sometimes, you know, they might do something wrong and then a big email comes around, and actually how do we change that so that people do feel that they can try and improve things, and if it doesn't quite work, what do we learn from it? So long as we're doing it in a safe way and in a safe environment, then you know, then let's encourage each other. Thank you very much. We are at time now, so thank you to everybody who has who's joined today. If it's inspired you to want to find out more, by all means contact the quality improvement team with any questions, with any requests or anything like that. As I say, there are some bite-sized bits of training on the website at the moment. We are looking to COVID has gone on now a lot longer than I think any of us imagined, so we are now looking to create our, what was a 2-day course, the content of that onto an online training as well. So very aware that that's kind of been missed over the last few months. So we're working on developing that. But any other ideas, anything that people have heard or suggestions for us, please let us know. So thank you very much for your time, and hopefully you're registered for a few more just for the events for today and tomorrow. And good luck with improving everything. Thank you very much.